Hello and welcome to the Dunamis EQ podcast. My name is Tolu and I'm your host for today. Thank you so much for listening in. This podcast is about emotional intelligence and about how that can really empower you in life, in leadership, in relationships. So we're just here to share stories, to inspire people to go on the journey of learning more about emotional intelligence and really learning just how to use that in the day-to-day life. Today, I have the privilege of being joined by Resham. So Resham and I work together. But we've been on an amazing journey over the years in different things. I'm just going to bring on Resham. So thank you so much, Resham, for joining us today.
Hi, thanks, Tolu. Thanks for having me. Very excited for this new leadership podcast.
I know, right? It's to be honest, it's been a long time coming. It's been something that I've been thinking about, and I'm taking the plunge, which is kind of like you actually, because you were one of the catalysts for me in actually doing my own. You're like, I'm on Anchor, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm like, yo. She's on it. She's on it because you have your own podcast.
I want to give you credit for that because that was inspired by you. You were like, Resh, you got to do a podcast, and you know what I mean. When I'm going to do
Absolutely.
it, I'm just going to go full
Yeah.
steam ahead. So this is great. We're both going to be learning as we go, and we can help each other. So this is a great journey for both of us.
100%. And your podcast is called the Now I Know podcast. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all about well-being, like the whole umbrella is about well-being, whether it's in the workplace, at home, as individuals. So, if you guys want to check it out, it's called Now I Know by Resham on all podcast platforms. So let me know what other topics I should be talking about. But yeah, it's just a platform for everyone to sort of learn and grow and understand the world of well-being and looking after ourselves and each other.
That's awesome. So what we'll do is we'll put the links to your show in the YouTube video and in all the podcast links as well. So yeah, the guys will be able to find it real easy. So what are some of the guests that you've had on the show so far?
Oh, it's been amazing. So my first guest was Dr. Reena Bajaj. She's an amazing award-winning counselling psychologist. So our first one was about sort of how to get therapy and to try and break the stigma about therapy and self-care. And the second one was about mental health in the army. So it was a young guy called Shravan. And, I'm trying to also break the stigma, not just about mental health, but for men to speak up. And because he's quite a young guy, maybe he can relate to our younger audience, our male audience. But it's generally how he got himself out of a rut and now he's got an amazing journey of, looking after his well-being and how he went from the dark side to the light side. And then the other guest is about financial well-being because the cost of living is massive at the moment. It's worrying people. So we've got an amazing financial advisor called Carla, and she just explains like money management in just like simple terms that our kids can understand. So yeah, lots more guests to come. So keep posted, guys. Really excited for this year.
That's amazing, and it's great that there are so many varied topics that people can get an insight into, and go on that journey of learning about so much about life. So that's really, really great. So tell us a little bit about you. Like, who are you?
Oh God, who am I? I've got many hats, Tolu, as you know. So I'm Resham. So I am a single mum. I've got two kids. One's 14, my daughter, my son is 9. As well as being a mum, I'm a leader at work, and I'm also coaching people, mentoring people. But my whole life is about transformation in work and out of work. And I think this topic is also quite relevant as well, because I'd say I'm also a life learner. So this podcast journey's been like, I'm constantly learning, in the workspace and as learning and growing myself as a person. I don't think you can ever be perfect, but also this podcast journey is like, you're learning about people and their experiences and just generally how to create a podcast. And, I believe in the law of attraction. So now I'm sort of attracting so many people that are on the same journey as me, like you and I, Tolu. But other than that, I think if people know me, that's one of the things they know me well as, like, a single mom, like coaching people, getting people up the ladder with me on my leadership journey. And I care so much about people that my passion is seeing others flourish, whether it's at work or just generally in their lives. So, even my friendship circle, my family, I'm sort of the go-to person in the family when they just want to pick up that call and just get that perspective and come away feeling a bit positive. So I think my just natural passion for people is just since I've been a kid. I think I was always one of those kids at school that, like if I saw someone that didn't have a friend or they were new, I'd be like, would you like to play? Would you like to join us? I'm very mindful of how people feel and are, I'm quite observant. So I think I'm that introvert. So I think I like talking to people about being an introvert as well, because
Sorry, wait, you're an introvert.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
But
Because
when I'm
guys, if
passionate, my God,
yeah,
do I open up, because I'm like, this is my passion. But if you saw me in a room, I'd be the
mm,
quiet one, taking it all in,
interesting.
you know.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
and it's funny you just reacted like that, because when I mentor people and they're like, I've been told I'm really quiet and I'm really
Mm.
shy and I can never progress. I'm like, do you know I'm an introvert? And they'll be like, hell no.
Wild. Wild. Because
Yeah.
guys, if you ever meet Resham, you will be very surprised that she's such an introvert. And I think this is a really important stigma as well, because often people think of introverts as not being confident enough to say those things. But I think you can absolutely be confident, absolutely express yourself really, really well and have energy and be bubbly, but also be introverted. So that's a really like, I had no idea. I had no idea. That's awesome.
Ah, you've learned something new today, Tolu.
I've learned something. Now I know. Now I know.
Now I know. I
Now
need
I
to do a
know.
podcast about now I know about introverts.
I think you should. I actually think you should, because I think it's a very misunderstood thing. Um, and I think what's really interesting is I totally agree with you about being like a lifelong learner. I think that's so important. And I think that's what people don't actually know about podcasting, is that half of these podcasts are actually for us, right? In terms of like, I've always wanted to have this chat with you, and let's just open it up for other people to listen. You know, so I get so much from doing these. So it's an honor to be able to do that. And just to touch on what you said, actually, where do you think it came from? You said that from a kid, you were quite, open, observant to how people were feeling and noticing people who needed to be uplifted. Like, where do you think that came from?
Oh, I think as a kid, come from a massive family in terms of like, not siblings, I've got a brother and a sister, but, I grew up
Okay.
with all my cousins and very
Mm,
family oriented, lots of family get togethers. Back in the day when like Sundays, the shops were closed, it was all about family,
mm,
getting together. And my mum and dad are if you ever meet them, they're like me. They're the quiet
mm,
people, but they're really kind, and they're always
mm,
thinking of the next person, and they've always instilled that in me, like respect and kindness for others.
mm,
If I was ever feeling down, and they'd be like, don't say anything, they've got their own thing going on, like we don't
mm,
always know what people have got going on. So like
mm,
just that awareness of that, everyone's got something going on, and just
mm.
don't get so angry when something isn't going your way. So I
Definitely.
think generally as a kid, I've always been just like kind and caring. But if you meet all my cousins, we're all the same. So people love being
Mm,
around us. We're very welcoming. We're not a clique. So if we went to a wedding, for example, we'd all be in
mm,
the dance floor. We'll bring everyone in. We just got like this energy. We're warm and welcoming. So I think just my upbringing is very like just kindness comes first.
mm,
You know,
mm,
my dad used to say to me, whether you're the cleaner or the MD, you talk to everyone with respect,
mm,
whatever age. And I think that's always been instilled with me, which is
mm.
why I think I've said this in my leadership talks, is people would say like, how can you just talk to that senior person over there? But I'm like, they're just a person with a heartbeat,
100%.
right?
100%.
Why are they any different?
Mm,
So even if I
mm,
go into the kitchen and I see, you see the cleaners just cleaning the kitchen up for us, I'll say morning
mm,
to them. How are you?
mm,
Because
mm.
why are they any different to anyone else on in the office? You know,
100%.
um, so yeah, I'd say it's come back from as a kid, just my parents being like, everything's about kindness.
Mm. Because I think kindness leads to understanding, because it makes you to think about other people and it puts you almost in their shoes, and it's such a great place to start from, just in how you approach life. Was there a time where you became more aware of emotional intelligence and you started to proactively pursue it and improve in it, or is it kind of always been that consistent thing?
In terms of being more aware of it, I think it's been when I had to start managing teams in the office,
Right.
because
Okay.
I've always just been a certain way with like my peers or colleagues or
Mm,
stakeholders. But then when you're
mm,
managing a team and then
mm.
you're having to give feedback,
Oh,
I was giving, for example, I was giving feedback. A first time manager, I was 24, right? And I was just giving,
24.
I was 24.
Wow.
So I was at Teletext, and I was given a digital team. We had to it went
Mm,
from the Teletext Lego writing on the TV. We
yeah.
then had to launch it on the website. So .co.uk was like what we had to
Mm,
do. So because I was very motivated and driven, and I was a high performer, I just assumed everyone else was. And then I had to build a
mm,
team and recruit them. And then, they'd produce a piece of work and then I'd have to give feedback on it. And I gave the feedback as if like, this is how I would probably want to hear it. And then I realized I'd upset a lot of people with my words. And I was like, oh my God. And it was only, I didn't realize it at the time, but, you know, after a few days when my, you know, people I was managing had calmed down, because we had great connection generally, they'd say to me like, you know, the other day you said this to me, it really upset me. And I was like so upset, like that I'd upset somebody. And I was like, I didn't realize. And then I was like, what was the right way to say it? Like, how did you want to hear it? And they'd say, maybe if you said it like this. So that's when I learned that, like, you know, I've really got to watch how I communicate what I'm trying to say, depending on who I'm talking to. So you've got to really adapt your language and comms depending on who you're talking to, you know. I'll give you an example. I had this other girl, she joined and she was amazing. She was absolutely amazing. But she'd come from a team where I call it like, you know, people they can either shine your light or they can dim your light. You know, we talk about this a lot, don't we, you and I?
Yeah.
And she came from a team where they were dimming her light. And I felt she was amazing. And I brought her to my team. And I gave her this feedback. And the next day she handed her notice in to me. And she said, the way you wanted me to improve this piece of work was, I felt like you didn't want me. I wasn't good enough. And I was like, whoa, yeah. And I
How
remember.
did you give her the feedback? What did you say?
I think I said something like, you know, I can't remember. It's 20 years ago. I can't remember. But all I remember her going, I would never forget. She just went, here's my notice. And I was like, oh my God, what have I said that you've just handed your notice in? And I pushed the notice back. You know, the paper days, you know, putting up a bit of paper.
I was gonna...
Not the digital days. And I said to her, give me 2 weeks. I want to give 2 weeks for you and to grow, and I want to give 2 weeks for me to grow and learn how I need to work on this. And I said to her, my intention was to make you the best person you could ever be, because I can see you got potential, right? And I said, your intention is going to be make Resh a better leader and give better feedback to me. So what I learned was we've really got to understand our intention behind what we're trying to say. And then 2 weeks later, caught up. I said, right, do you still want to leave? And she was like, hell no. Like to work for someone that is listening and understanding and then doing something about it, like that's great. Like we're helping each other grow. So yeah, that's when I had to take a real check on myself. Like, what am I doing? You know, because then that's when you understand people are so different, because of her life experiences, she was just her light was getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And then when I came along, she thought just switching her light off. But I was like, I want you to shine bright and even brighter every day. And like, this is how we're going to do it. So now when I have to give feedback, I sort of say my intention behind the feedback, like
100%.
I want to tell you something because I want you to be so amazing. And I know you can get there. And I think when you start with the intention, 90% of the time it works. You know, sometimes you still got to work on it, but yeah, I haven't always got it right. And I'm just grateful that we've been able to have a connection outside of management and, you know, colleague type environments, that they can then come to me and say, you know, the day when you said it, this is how I felt. And I was like, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry. You know, so I think acknowledging it is key as well.
I think that's so, for me, that was so interesting, because a lot of people would be scared to go and have that conversation with their manager. And I think that it shows the kind of environment that you've built with the people that were working for you, that even though like you still hurt them, they still felt free to be able to say, look, do you know what? That really hurt me, because it takes a lot of guts to go to your manager and say, what you did wasn't the right thing.
Yeah.
Like, it had a negative impact on me. Like, that takes a lot of, they call it like psychological safety.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the key things, I think, is we are all human. We're going to make mistakes. You know, there's going to be times when I'm not going to get it right. You're not going to get it right. But having enough goodwill with people that you've built up, that even when you do screw up, you know, it's not like a catastrophe.
Yeah, totally.
So I think it's so
and I think
interesting.
that word is so key in performance in high performing teams or anything. It's psychological safety. Mind you, my high performing team workshops, it's a really big topic of discussion. Like, how safe do you feel in this environment? You know, and like you say, because you know, and the other flip side is you can make a safe space that people can give you the feedback, but then it's like, what are you then going to do with it? Because if all you're doing is taking the feedback and not changing, they're going to stop even bothering giving
100%.
any of their time.
because it's effort on both sides. And I liked what you said about, I'm going to give you 2 weeks to improve, but it's also 2 weeks for me to improve. That is like, what made you think of that?
I don't know. I think because it was my first time managing, and I was like,
Mm.
I don't want to mess this up. I'm just at the start of my leadership journey, and like, this is not great. You know what I mean? I'm only
Yeah.
20. I've got a long time to go. 24 hours. And and it wasn't like people said, I'm going to train you how to be a manager. You just like get
No,
given the title,
this is it.
figure it
This
out,
is it.
And this is why I think podcasts are so great. Like if we had them back in the day, like I would have been a better leader a long time ago. But you can
Mm.
learn and grow, and it's a bit like having a parent. If you've got a great parent, you've probably got some great role models, right? But
Yes.
if you're working for managers that aren't great, you're going to pick up some bad habits, or but unless someone points it out, it's like
Mm.
having a naughty kid and no one's telling them they're being naughty. Like how are they ever going
Yes.
to know that they need to evolve and
100%.
grow? But yeah, for me, I think I was at the start and I was building this team and we were growing massive. I thought, I've got to get this right, because,
Mm.
They've trusted me with, here you go, Resh, we're going to launch a website and we're going to build a team. And like, here's your budget, here's your headcount,
Mm.
and I've got to get
Mm.
it right, And I think because I cared about people. So if someone was upset, that would upset me, especially if I
Mm.
was the cause of it. So
Mm.
for me, I think, maybe if I was someone that didn't really care and didn't really take a look at myself, I would have just taken her notice. I'd be like, cool, see you later. I'll just fill your boots with someone else. But I really cared about her. She was a lovely
Yes.
girl and I saw her talent. I wanted her to come to my team. So I didn't want to lose, I valued her and I didn't want to lose her talent. And just letting her know that she was valued and I wanted to keep her and grow her, she was
Mm.
like, I'm staying. And now
Mm.
she's, we've all left, that we're all in our 20s, we've all left. And, she's doing amazing things in the industry. And I hope she remembers that conversation, the way I do. She might say it a bit
Mm.
differently, but that's how I remember it. But no, like, it's just nice to see everyone grow and like, we're all growing, we're all learning. And I don't think you can ever
Mm.
stop.
No, I think if you stop, you're in trouble because the world is always changing, always growing, always evolving. And I think what I picked up from what you said is that leadership is it's a responsibility, right? And I really feel like it's so true that often what happens is that you're good at your job, so you get promoted into management or into leadership. But being good at doing your job is very different from being good at managing a team and leading a team, because there's also a difference between managing and leading.
Yeah, totally.
So I think you're so right. Like it's not easy to get that leadership training and experience. And I've just been very blessed. Like pretty much every manager that I've had has been an outstanding leader. So my parents in leadership have been really, really good. So I've learned so much from that. And that's really why I wanted to do this podcast, is for people to be able to connect with great leaders. And not just in terms of, their senior at work, but also just people who are great leaders in life, great leaders to their friends, because we all lead each other, so that's why for me this podcast is so important. Probably a little bit out of order, but what does emotional intelligence mean to you? We probably should have done that at the beginning, right?
Emotional intelligence. A bit like sort of what I said about when I got that feedback as a first-time manager, like being really aware of how your energy is coming across to someone, but also understanding the different energies in the room, because I think a great leader can understand, like, that how we mentioned introverts. A great leader can see that if you're in a room, what different personality types have I got in front of me? What different energy levels? And also, you can have people who are having a good day and a bad day, and you can judge that. You can see it already. So my mentors are amazing, because I remember being at work one day, and then you know me, Tolu, I'm quite jolly, I'm bubbly, I'm lively, and my mentor came up to me and we had a meeting and she pulled me aside after and she said, "Is everything okay? Like, you're not yourself." And
Wow.
to me, I hold her as a great leader, because I thought, you spotted that.
You saw
Like,
it,
emotional
yeah.
intelligence is really spotting that. And also I think she picked a great time to talk to me. She didn't sort of say it in the room or, or wait a week. She just took me out afterwards. Was like, "Is everything okay? I've just noticed." And I think, so for me, emotion is like, being really aware of how you are, but also everyone else around you. It's just so important. And that can fluctuate, like all your people, like the person that's, the comedian might not be the comedian tomorrow. So it's like everyone's got something going on each day.
So true.
So I just think you've really got to be aware of it. And, like, and it's great to be open about it. Like I'm quite open with my team. Like I didn't sleep last night. The kids were up till
mm,
4, kids were ill,
mm,
just having the open communication, which then makes other
mm,
people open to share what's going on with them.
mm. I love that. And I think one thing I picked up on what you said was about she knew the right time. Because some of the feedback that I had, because I'm very much about let's give feedback as we go, da da da. And I had some feedback from someone once that was like, "You give me feedback at the worst times," and I was like, "Oh," because for me, I'm just like I'm thinking about it. It's just happened. I want to give it fresh. But for that person, they actually needed time to reflect on what's just happened, and the time that I'm talking to them about it, I process as I go. Right, so you'll know exactly how I feel as I feel it. I'm feeling it out, I'm thinking it through, but they wanted time to go away, have a think about it, maybe journal about it, and then come back for the feedback. And that really was like, whoa, okay, I need to be really mindful of even checking that it's a good time to give feedback.
That's
And I feel
interesting.
like, yeah, it had never crossed my mind, that
Yeah.
actually the timing of when I give that feedback is so important. um, and I'm really trying to find the balance of, because I feel like sometimes when your manager asks you for something, you feel like you have to say yes. So if I ask you like, okay, is now a good time to talk about feedback? Some people will feel like, well, it's my manager, I have to say yes. And I'm literally like trying to gauge their face. Like, did they wince? Did they like? Is there something that they'll say yes, but they actually mean no? And I try and say,
Yeah.
look, if it's really not a good time, we can do it whenever you like. Really make it clear, like, this is not a you have to do this. This is a
Yeah.
do you want to do this right now? So your
Yeah.
timing thing just really made me think about how important understanding other people's timing is. And
Yeah.
actually, even though it's a good time for me, I should sacrifice that because for you, that's what's really important is that you receive the feedback and you're able to do something with it. So the timing is really important. So I love what you said
Yeah.
about her
So what
knowing the
would you say
timing.
instead then? Like, when is a good time to give feedback? Or
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It's kind of like, and that's the thing. How open can you be with the question? You know,
yeah.
and something I'm really trying to work on. So I became a head of department last year, so I had a whole new team of people. And one of the things I really tried to do was be like, how do you like to be managed? Like, what do you like? What do you dislike? Because I'm me. I know what I like. And like you, when you said about your high performance, so you think that other people also want to be high performance, right? And
Yeah.
some people actually, they don't. They actually want to,
Yeah.
I just want to come to work, do my thing and go home. And that's actually okay. But then
Totally.
if I'm high performance and I'm like, no, 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 you need to improve, you need to do this, it's going to be horrible, you know?
Absolutely. And that's why it's really like when talking about emotion, it's really good to really know your people, because some
Yes.
people are just work. This is their little side hustle. They've got a passion project going outside of work, right? So
Mm, mm,
they want to stay where they are. They don't want to grow.
mm,
They're like, just
mm,
let me get my job done, pay my bills, I'm done. And that's when a
mm,
leader needs to know their people, because if you know that
mm.
person, you're going to just leave them be.
Yeah,
They'll just be there when they need to check in, like, just
yeah,
make sure your door is open if they need you, and it, like you say, not everyone wants to progress as well, and it's knowing that,
no.
which is really key.
And and it's that balance of like we still have a job to do in terms of you still have to deliver your work. Like it's not about, well, if they want to slack, no, 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 but like how
Yeah.
hard do I encourage you? How hard do I challenge you? Because actually that's what it comes down to, is my job as a leader is to get you to where you want to go, right?
Yeah.
And if where you want to go is, look, in a year or two from now, I want to have been here and just done my job well, and then go home, cool. That's what we work to. But it's all, like you said, it's all about understanding your people and having those conversations to say, okay, what is it that actually shines your light? What brightens your light? What can I do to make your life better? Right.
Yeah.
And those conversations they're amazing. I remember because I'm really big on autonomy, and this was also a really interesting learning for me, was that I say to people like, look, I'm not here to micromanage you.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to get on with what you do. And someone gave me feedback a few months later, and they were like, look, every time someone has ever said to me, I'm not a micromanager, they literally turn around the next day and start micromanaging. And he was like, you're the first time that someone hasn't done that, and you've just let me be. And I'm like, interesting. I think I need to also adjust how I communicate that then. Because maybe that's that thing of like, I'm not racist, but, and then people go on and be
Yeah.
racist.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, so all this feedback is so good as to,
Yeah.
okay, how do I need to be like?
Yeah, it's interesting to talk about feedbacks, right? So I do feedback workshops, and one of the questions I
Yes.
ask is, how often should we give people feedback, right? And then we
Yes.
do a little poll, and it's very different. Some people say once a week, some people say twice a week, some say once a month. Some people don't even do it at all. Um,
Wow.
but what I say to them is that, right? Like, say for example, you've got 10 people,
Mm.
I say, ask them the question, how often would you like to have a check
Yes.
in or one to one? Because
Yes.
your people are so different. So, for example, a new starter might say weekly check ins, right? Because I need to know I'm on track, I'm
Mm.
doing things well.
Mm.
Someone who's like a master or an expert, especially when you've come in, like you, Tolly, you've come in from an outside team in as a new role into that team. And
Mm.
you've got experts under you, they know the job. So you might be like, actually,
100%.
you know what? We've got to check in once a month. But if you need me more than that, I'm here. My door is
Mm.
open. And this is
Mm.
the thing. This is what I'm trying to get managers to do is, there's no one set way of
No.
giving the feedback, receiving it, or even managing the team. If you know your people, you'll know the
Yes.
style you need to adapt to, the language, the timing of everything. But
Mm.
I don't think enough, let's not say the word manager, say leader. I don't think enough leaders are getting to know their people first because and
Yes.
that takes time, trust and investing and the communication, the connection is so that takes a lot of time, and then
100%.
you really get to know your people. And I think people get so work, right, I've started a job, just let's just run,
Get it on. Yeah.
get to just pace it slowly,
Mm. And I think it's a sacrifice, right? Because you do sacrifice some delivery at the beginning sometimes to really get into that rhythm because you're not driving after delivery at first. You're trying to get understanding.
yeah,
But I feel like it pays off so big in the long term when because one of the things I've really loved about working with you is watching the people that you've brought into the different scenarios. So like Resham is a great connector, right? So we were both serving in one of those, what is it, like employee steering groups or something like that.
yeah,
And Resh would bring in all these people, and they were like, a lot of them were quite young, and just watching them flourish and grow, right? And seeing the payoff, it's huge. It's amazing. And how does that feel for you? Like what do you see when that happens?
do you know what, when I do it at the time, it's just natural, it's what I would do,
Mm.
for anyone, anything, any
Mm.
family member. It was what I do. It's my
Mm.
DNA. But
Mm.
it's when they like, oh my God, thank you. And I'm like, for what? Like,
For
isn't
what?
this what everybody does? And they're like, no,
Yeah.
but that's just is it. Not everyone does this. And
Mm.
that's when you
Mm.
realize like this is how you can like teach people or have an impact on somebody. Because now
Mm.
if I can show people what I just did, and then
Mm.
when they're in that position, they can do the same for the next person. That ripple effect I always
Mm.
talk about. But
Yeah.
oh my God, the feedback, like, me, Todd, I'll be like, Todd, I've had some amazing feedback today. So my success is, oh
Mm.
my God, the feedback people give me on the difference I've made to their day or just
100%.
anything I've done. And I'm like, wow, like this is either I'm really good at what I do or there's not enough people doing great things for their people. I don't really know how to take it, but that's why I love to
To
do
be
some of the
honest,
talks.
I think it's both, right? Because in watching you do what you do, you are very good at what you do, right?
Thank
And in
you.
a lot of ways, that's no, like it's you that did it, right? I didn't do anything for that. You did that. Like you're very good at what you do. I think what also amplifies that as well is the fact that there's not a lot of people doing it. And a lot of the people that you're working with, it's almost like going from like minus 100 to plus a million. It's like
I'm gonna put that on my
there
TV.
aren't
I love
yeah, minus 100 to plus a million. That's the ripple
that.
effect, right? Because it's, I feel like leadership is not always easy. It's a lot of hard decisions. So like even just self leadership is not easy. It takes a lot, and so I feel like as a society we're not very well equipped to lead well. And I don't think it's not the people's fault because they've just never been exposed to it. I'm very blessed to have been exposed to high level leaders.
Yeah.
So I think it's both things. Like you're very good at what you do. At the same time, there's also not enough people doing
Yeah.
what you do, and that's why I think that the work that you do in your day job is so important. The work that you do in the podcast is so important because it's all about how do I take what I know and what I've been given, and how do I get that out to as many people as possible, make it as simple as possible for people to get it and run with it. Because the more people that have kindness, the more people that have emotional intelligence, the more people that know how to give and receive feedback and to lead well, our world is going to be such a better place.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think touching on the podcast, sharing that story, we do a lot of talks about sharing our journey and our stories,
Mm, mm,
and everyone that's doing a podcast and you want to amplify, you probably use sort of tools like I'm using Anchor to spread,
yes.
on distribute it across other platforms. And yesterday I was just on the stats, like you get a bit
Mm,
obsessed with the stats, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it said that like the podcast had reached Israel, and
Israel.
Israel, right? And I was like,
What?
oh my God. Like, so imagine this person has just
Yeah,
watched How to Get Help or
yeah,
Therapy, and it's in
yeah.
Israel. Like, I could
That's
never have done
amazing.
that if I didn't do the podcast.
And
So
it's
imagine someone else
yeah,
going to listen to How to Be a Great Leader, and they're not even, you'll never meet them, Tolu, because you're going to
never.
make an impact on someone that's wider than your inner circle, your network. And it's amazing, like how anyone can tune in on a topic and really
Mm,
want to learn and understand it. So, for example, when I run my workshops, it's like, I'm going to run this workshop and you are
mm,
welcome. It's not mandatory, it's optional. But so what you see
mm.
is you see the people that want to learn, you see the
Want to
people that
learn.
want to
Yeah,
grow, they're investing in
100%.
themselves. And unfortunately, like you said, till there's not enough people, it is the same people coming in.
Mm,
And I'm
mm.
like, this is great you're here, but the people that really need to be here are not in
They're
this
not
room.
here.
And they're the ones that need it.
and
So
and
it's how do
how
we
do
spread that
you
message?
feel about, like, is there frustration when there are people who need it, but they're not engaging? Is that frustrating, or like how do you deal with that?
Yeah. It is so frustrating because I'm passionate and I want change now.
Mm,
So you know, I've mentioned this in other podcasts as well that I went from a place of like I just want to change these people and like why are they not
mm,
growing, why they're not progressing, and then I went
mm,
from that to do you know what? I'm just stressing myself out. I'm just
mm,
going to take one change a day. I am
mm,
going to work with one person. If I could change one individual in a one-to-one conversation, remember I said it's investing in people it takes a lot of time. But if you can
mm,
do it well and do it properly, that ripple effect is enormous, right? It's invaluable.
mm,
I've
mm,
mentioned this quote I say a lot as well. Martin Luther King Jr. said, don't think of the whole staircase, just take the first step. So that's
love it.
my thing now. If you asked me a year ago, I'd be totally stressing my head out. But now I'm like,
Mm,
no, baby steps. And also sometimes
mm,
you just got to realize, I talk a lot about shining the light, but or you can show them, here's the light, but you can't make them come. You can't make them
mm,
do anything. And
mm,
on the flip side, there are people that come to all my workshops about high performance or feedback, and then
mm,
they don't use any of the tools. So
mm,
it's frustrating both ways because I'm like, you've probably spent 6 hours of your time with me on
mm,
several topics. You've not used any of it. So I'm
mm.
like, you've got the toolbox, to use the tools, but I can't make them use the tools. So it
No.
is frustrating, but I've learned to let go of
Mm,
seeing any sort of change. It's like
mm,
when the time is right, there will be change. And
mm,
that's all I have. I have no control over that. But it is frustrating. But I think you just get to a point where, there's only so many times you can talk to someone and then you're like, I'm not actually going to give my energy here. I'm going to focus my energy here. But yeah, it is frustrating when you want to grow, but also Tolly, you know me, because I've got the reputation of transformation. Someone
mm,
will only work with me if they want to change. I don't,
mm,
after about
mm,
2 or 3 meetings, if they're not going to change, I don't work with them anymore because it's
mm,
like I'm not seeing any change here. It like
mm,
let me move on to the next person. So yeah,
mm.
it is frustrating, but I've just learned to how to manage it. You know.
I agree, and I think it is that thing of how am I setting my expectations? It's like my expectation, because I come from a sports background, so my expectation is everyone wants to get in the gym, everyone wants to work hard, and everyone wants to improve. But I think as I've kind of grown through leadership, I've realized that like everybody is so different. Everybody has different motivations. People have had different journeys to get there. I've had a journey of I've had to get better, right? So that's part of now who I've become. But not everybody is at that same stage of the journey either. Some people are just starting that journey of I want to get better. And what I would say to you is that even those people who take the tools and they don't use them, the way that I see it is like I've sown a seed with that person where maybe 10 years down the line, they'll be like, do you know what? That stuff that Resh said was actually bang on, and now I'm going to start running with it. And that's all we can do is just put
Yeah.
things out there, sow the seed, and if it grows, great. If not, then it's there ready to grow at some point. But it's like if people never have the opportunity, it can definitely never grow. you know. So I agree with you. It can be super frustrating. And me personally, I'm just working on how do I baseline my expectations to a place that I can work with people, because there are some people that I don't have the choice sometimes of if I work with that person or not, right? It's great
Yeah.
that you actually can say like, okay, look, do you really want to do this or do you don't? Because sometimes you
Yeah.
can't. You've just got to work with the person.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm really working on, is how do I get my expectations set so that no matter what comes through or comes back, I can deal with it with grace, and I can still be an encouragement to that person. And maybe down the line, they'll come back and go, like, you know, like with me, it's my parents. My parents were always like, look, when you're older, you're going to come back and you're going to be like, you guys were right. You're going to say thank you. I was like,
Yeah.
never, never going to happen, never going to happen. And then there was one day I just sat on my bed. I was like, oh, they were actually right. You know, and I
Yeah,
had to go
totally.
do it and be like,
Yeah.
thank you for everything you sowed into me, you know?
Yeah.
And I
It's
think it's
funny you
going to be
say
the
that
same.
because you know, you go to the rebellious stage in your 20s, or like, you know,
100%.
what are you talking about, mum? What are you talking about, dad? And only now, right, I'm 46, and now I go to my daughter, oh, my mum was so right when she used to say
Yeah.
that stuff. You know, when I say stuff to my kids and I can see
Yeah.
the eye rolling, I'm like, it's
Yeah.
fine now, but when you're 40, you're gonna
Just
remember what
wait.
I
Yeah.
said.
Just wait. It's going to come back. It's going to come back.
Totally. You're right. You're so right. And I think if you have that perspective, you're gonna have like one day, you're gonna
One
remember
day
me,
they
you're
will
gonna
get
thank
it.
me, you
Yeah.
know?
Exactly. Exactly. So on that point, actually, like, what are you doing with your kids about teaching them how to be emotionally intelligent?
So I'll give you an example. So my son is 9, and you know when he'll
Mm,
come back home and be like, "This person upset me," or "This person wasn't
mm,
nice," and I listen and I get it. I'm not going to be like, I won't be an ally and encourage the conversation because I
yes.
don't know what the other person's going through. But I'll say to him, like, what I say to my son is, because he's 9, I say to him, "Listen, your friend might be really unhappy with something, and it
Mm,
just so happened that you were just in their way and you
mm,
got the repercussions of it."
mm,
And he'd be like, "Oh, okay," you know. So for his age, make him understand that when people don't behave the way we want them or expect them, they've got something else going on, and it might be nothing to do with you. So just
mm,
be
mm,
kind, you know, just be really
mm,
kind to that
mm,
person, and just walk away. That's all you can do.
mm.
For my daughter who's 14, I talk about something called map of reference, you know, and I
Okay.
say, look, if you were in that person's shoes and you had the upbringing they had, and you went
Yes.
through the challenges they had, you're probably
Mm.
also going to react in the exact same way,
Same way. Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah.
the language I use with my kids is very different, just so that they're
Mm,
understanding. Whereas my daughter's, she's highly intelligent, so I can have these amazing conversations with her. So we just
mm.
use the terms like map of reference. Their map of reference is very
Love it.
different. Or when, you know, when you go to people's houses and like one person does it one way, you know,
Mm.
one person does it another way. And I'm like, you know, that if you understand how they've been brought up, that's why they do what
Yes.
they do. And
Yes.
just respect it. You might not understand it, but just respect everybody. So yeah, it's
Mm.
very different. So trying to make them understand like empathy is so important,
Yeah.
kindness is so important. So I listen to them at the dinner table about anything they've got going on, but I think it's mainly like trying to react to what they got going on, you know?
Mm.
And, you
Mm.
know, like for example, like, you know, my son Dylan's got like an autistic boy in his room, and he's become a lot kinder to the way this boy, because this guy lashes out a lot and he gets like a bit scared, so he knows to walk away.
Mm.
Don't
Mm.
get upset, it's not you, you know? And then he
Mm.
also knows that he can go to a teacher. So making sure Dylan can go to a teacher if he needs to talk about something, rather than, you know, when kids get together and then they're mean to another kid. Like, I don't want that
Mm.
happening. But yeah, my daughter's
Mm.
great. Like, we have amazing conversations. You know, she studies like sociology and psychology. So we have
Wow.
really great conversations about people. But her one is being really, I want her to be this really confident South Asian woman growing up, you know, not feeling
Mm.
like she's a female or her color's going to stop her, like just trying to
Mm.
build confidence in her that,
Mm.
you know, um, we say this all the time. We say, speak the truth, but with kindness, you know?
100%.
And so that's something I'm trying to instill in my daughter, because growing up, I was so quiet that even no matter what I felt, I probably couldn't articulate it or communicate it. And then it would come out in like, I just burst, you know, like
Mm.
with unhappiness
Mm.
or feeling really upset. So I'm trying to make sure, you know, that she doesn't learn my patterns that from a young age.
Mm.
So really getting them to understand everyone's got a map of reference, empathy, kindness, you know. Sometimes it's not right. Like Whitney Houston says, it's not right, but it's okay.
But it's okay. I'm gonna make it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, like, and
Yeah.
just understanding that is so important. And something I say
Mm.
as well is like, you know, when you're upset or angry, I say to them, don't respond to something straight away. Because when I was growing up in my career, the feedback my managers used to give me was, your emails, Resh, just so like you're telling people
and you wrote it down.
yeah. And I'll be
You
like,
put it on
what?
email.
I just meant this. And they're like,
Yes.
oh, you meant that, but it sounded like this. And I was like, oh,
Yes.
God. Okay. So that's what I say to the kids, like, take time to respond when you're not happy about something, you know, because when you take emotions out of it a day later, you'd respond in a totally
It's
different
totally
way.
different.
Yeah.
Totally different. And
It's
I
like
think that
sending emails, right? Stick it in your draft and then send it a bit later.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Because I think the coping mechanisms of, what's it called, the map of reference, I love that. Because it's that thing of what they've done is terrible. But the balance is that I don't know why they've actually done that, because I think that on the whole, I don't think most people want to be evil, right? If you tell people that really hurt me, most people are going to be mortified. Granted, there are some absolute like wicked people in this world, don't get me wrong, right? But most people, they're not coming from a place of, that Resh, I really want to get her. No, like everyone's just trying to figure it out, you know, and everyone's had their different traumas and journeys and experiences, and that is really shaping how they do what they do. So I think the coping mechanisms that you're giving to your children are so important, because it also relieves you of stress, right? Because we get stressed about things that we can't control. I can't control another person. I can't control their response. But when I can understand maybe reasons why they do it, it really softens that blow and that weight of what's happened, and it just relaxes everything, you know?
Yeah.
Nothing is that big of an issue that I need to be getting stressed about. It helps to reduce stress, you know?
Yeah. And I think, you know, when like you said, it's like when you're giving feedback to someone, and when I have plucked up the courage to say to someone, you know, when you said this, it made me feel this way, like they've always been like, oh my God, that was not my intention. So I think if we understand that no one has an intention of upsetting you, then it's quite nerve-wracking even just bringing up that conversation, isn't it? So when people have come up and said it to me, I'm like, how many days were they festering over when I had a conversation with Resham, you know?
And I'm not even thinking about it. Like, and that's the crazy thing, is that like the way that it hurts you, they're not even thinking about it often. So it's so good to be able to have that conversation. And I feel like even those people that are actually wicked, when you talk to them and you understand their story and you understand their journey, you're like, you're just really broken. You know, you're just really, really broken. Like something has really hurt you to the point that is how you protect yourself, or that's how you respond. So I think understanding of people and their motivations is so key, so important.
Yeah, so true. And like I say, you know, when you get to know people and you understand their journeys, and that, like I said, that connection and trust comes with time. There was a guy I was coaching to be a manager, leader, and the feedback from his team was he doesn't trust us, he micromanages us, and like I just need to get my work done. And it took me about a few years to get to know this guy, and we then started to talk about his childhood, and apparently this guy grew up with his dad had a restaurant, and his dad had a really successful restaurant, and then it was doing so well that he ended up branching out into a couple of others. And when he did that, he couldn't be in the same restaurant, so he was like, you know, checking on the other ones. He was in different restaurants at different times, and the staff started to steal from him. And I said to him, do you think your distrust of your team is stemming from that experience? He was like, oh my God, I never thought about it.
Wow, he wasn't even aware.
Yeah, and he goes, now you said it, you're right. You're right. It's just my trust. I don't trust people because of what I've seen, you know?
Because his dad, he would have probably seen the hurt that his dad went through, you know, how damaging it was at home, and maybe even like with his parents' relationship, like there's so much fallout that can happen from things like that we would never think about.
Yeah. So I had to sort of coach him to be like, firstly, mate, this ain't your restaurant, right?
Yeah.
A team of amazing people, you know?
Yeah.
And thirdly, they're not handling money, right? So it's just tasks. So we can deal with that. We can deal with that, you know? So he's like, okay. So it took a while, but it's so interesting, right? The map of reference, right? That was his map of reference.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Wow. I've learned, now I know about map of reference. That's a new one. That's a new one. Because it's so cool, like, I think those things, but I didn't realize, like, for example, that's a structure and a framework. That's a
Yeah.
natural thing.
Yeah.
So that's really, really cool. What how have you learned about emotional intelligence? Like, what kind of stuff have you done? Like, are there any resources that have been really good for you, or experiences that you've had that have really helped you with emotional intelligence?
Yeah, I think firstly having kids, right? They really keep you in check. They tell you
Yeah.
straight as you are. I'm like, oh my God, am I that evil? You know? Um, but secondly, like, when like I think Sky are really good at this, right? Like this whole
Mm,
360 feedback tool and everything being
yes.
anonymous. I think
Yes.
anonymizing feedback is
Mm,
crucial, right? Because
mm,
people don't like repercussions of like the honest
mm,
feedback.
mm,
So I think that something like the 360 feedback is so powerful,
mm,
anonymous, right? So
mm,
I think that's what's worked for me is like asking for feedback. And also the questions have to
mm,
be really specific and really like versed in the right way, because something that can be airy fairy. So
mm,
what I've learned is that I'm great in all aspects of like building high performance, but the way I can communicate certain feedback is what I need to work on. So my
mm,
language and firstly, I've learned from other companies, my manager said to me, never send an email first. Have the conversation
mm,
because
mm,
they can hear the tone and then do a
mm,
follow-up email after the conversation. Because when I do it
mm,
the other way
mm,
round, my emails
mm,
sound telling off. And I'm like,
mm,
oh, that's not what I'm trying to say. Okay.
mm, mm,
So I
mm.
think that's probably why like you've seen me in the office, Tolly, with hybrid working. When I'm in,
Yes.
I'm never at my desk. I'm talking,
Mm.
walking. People laugh at me. They're like, you're never at your desk. I'm like, I want to use my time in the office to really have that
To the
face-to-face people
maximum.
connection.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
get the balance and I come home and then I do all my write-up. It's just, I think
Mm,
working
mm.
smarter, not harder is really key.
100%. 100%.
So I do think getting the balance right is really important. But I think, yeah, I mean, that's something I always have to work on, is
Mm,
how I'm communicating what I'm saying. And, I've been like leading for 20 years, right? But
mm,
there's still times I know I've probably not got it right. And I'm like, and I'll actually send it. And sometimes I'll actually go up to someone before they've come up to me and say, I sent you something. I've got a feeling I
mm,
might have upset you.
mm,
Is everything okay?
mm,
Like I'm a bit more aware of how I've actually said something, you know?
mm. I think that self-awareness and taking time to actually reflect. So sometimes, to be honest, like even just going back through messages or emails and going, oh, now I read it back, actually, maybe not, and I
Yeah.
think that takes a lot of humility. And I think
Yeah.
leadership a lot is about humility, because we're all humans just trying to lead each other,
Yeah.
so we're
Totally.
going to get it wrong. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. So yeah, I think I love that about thinking back, looking back, approaching people about it, because that takes a lot of the fear out for them
Yeah.
of, oh, I've had this awkward interaction. I want to talk about it, but I don't know how to broach it. I think those kind of check-ins are really, really, really powerful.
Yeah. I think the other one that's come to mind is, I mean, me, Tola, when there's like an email and it's just
Mm.
about a topic and someone's not happy, and then the email conversation gets bigger and bigger and
Yes.
there's loads of people on
Yeah.
there. All I'm thinking about is, oh my God, how are people reacting when they're reading this email? So
Yes.
people think I've not contributed to this debate, but what I've done is I've done it out of the email. Like
Outside.
I've not done it. I've done it on the side. I
Mm.
will rather go and talk to them because I know my emails can sound bad. So I'm going to just add fuel to the fire if I. So I know what I'm trying to say, but I'd
Mm.
rather say it face to face
Yes.
later. You know.
Yes.
So there's lots of ways we can improve on our communication, but I think if anyone's listening and they're really frustrated, please don't send emails. Like, please calm
Mm.
down and then maybe
Mm.
think about it and maybe make a phone call to somebody rather than
Mm.
just we're all people just trying to get through the day and just help each other
This
out.
is
We're not
exactly it.
we don't want to throw anyone under the bus, or it's just I
Mm.
think that's the sort of toxic behaviors that I think people need to hear is like the impact you've just had on someone is not great,
Mm.
you know.
Mm.
So yeah, I just think if anyone's listening, please, like if you're upset about something or angry, just wait before you send anything because it can look totally different in 24 hours.
And I think what I really try and do is I try and think of every reason why this person is behaving like this. Like, if you see some of the emails that I get, I'm like, wow, like you fully sat at your desk, wrote this terrible email, and didn't think of the fact that it has evidence, repercussions. Like, this
Yeah.
could really end badly for you. So I genuinely try and think about every reason why, like, okay, why is this person like this? Maybe they've had a bad day. Maybe they're under pressure. Maybe this, maybe that. And then by the time I can talk to them, I can say, look, normally you're cool. Like, what's that email about? You know, like,
Yeah.
this is how it came across. And normally, like, we get on really well, but this email is like, it's pretty bad. So, like, it's out of character, you know,
Yeah,
giving people that
totally.
benefit of the doubt to say, look, okay, what's got you to the point where you're sending emails that I know you normally wouldn't send? Because it's pretty
Yeah.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And that's it,
Mm.
because you know your people, you'll know
Yeah.
when that's something's not right here. Like this isn't
Yeah.
so out of character, you know?
Mm. Agreed. Agreed. And I think it extends even past people that you manage or you lead, but also to people that you work with day to day. You know, like I loved what you said about your mentor who was like able to see you and be like, look, you seem out of character. And I think that's probably something that I would challenge everybody with is like, how can you be more observant about those around you? It goes back to kind of where we started in terms of you as a kid, you know, seeing who's down, seeing who's not themselves, seeing people around,
Yeah.
and really just taking an interest in people and their well-being. I think that's super, super important.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So important now. And I think that's why I wanted to do the wellbeing podcast, because I think there's so many aspects of wellbeing.
Mm,
Like for example, like I might hit, I've got a friend and I haven't heard from her for a while. And I'm like, it's not like her to not respond. She must have something going
mm,
on. And I send a
mm,
voice note. But other people might go, I've not heard from that person for a while. Delete,
mm,
block,
mm,
whatever.
mm.
But someone's always got something going on. So it's about being kind to everybody,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
before we judge them.
100%. Agreed. Just before we finish, is there anything else that you would like to say?
I'm going to ask, who inspired you, Tolu? Because you are one of the most amazing leaders I've ever met. And not only are you amazing, but you just have this magnetic effect of make everyone around you so amazing, because you've helped me grow in, you've shone my light. You shown me my talent at Sky, and you've brought me in. You've given me seats at the table. But where did you learn that from? I know you say your parents, but there must have been someone in the workplace as well that you learned all this stuff from.
Well, firstly, that's very humbling and a little bit embarrassing. Like you're making a black man blush. So, like honestly, thank you, thank you so much for your kind words. I feel like I've just, even in the stuff you're talking about, it's just a privilege to walk alongside people, and I just really want people to win, right? So, like, I want you to win. I want you to get paid what you should get paid. I want you to have the success you should have. So that's for me where a lot of that comes from. I think that my parents definitely is a big source of that. Like I love my parents, and Nigerian parents can sometimes be quite, I don't know what the word is, but you looking at your face, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Um, but my parents, they were very counterculture. You know, like I remember when I asked my dad, you know, I wanted to get my ear pierced. In most Nigerian households, that is like hitting the roof, you know. But my dad thought it through. He reasoned with me. He asked me questions. My mum was someone who was always like, if you're angry with her, she'll always come to you and be like, look, what have I done? And that kind of thing. So I think I'm very blessed with that kind of upbringing. But then when I got into work, um, one of my first managers off the grad scheme, called Harry Gill, like he taught me so much. You know, he just took such an interest in me. He asked me lots of good questions. He taught me about the game as well. You know, so he took an interest in me. And then my manager Wayne Butler, who I'd had for a long time, like I was with him for like 7, maybe 8 years. Like
Wow.
just the way that like from day one, he was like, I see you as a Premiership football player. Like, go out and be that. He's like, I can tell that you're doubting yourself. You're this. You're that. Like, he'd observed me, you know,
Wow.
because I was working in his team for a while, and then he asked me to come and work directly for him because we were having some structural changes. And he'd observed me, and he said, "Look, this is what I've seen of you. Go be awesome," basically. And it just really
Wow.
like it put so much confidence in me to try things out, to fail, you know. Um, and my manager now, Danny, like we're only a year into our relationship, but like he challenges me in a very different way because he's also seeing things from a different perspective. He doesn't know me like that. Like I haven't grown up with him. I grew up with Wayne, you know.
Yeah.
But Danny, like I've only been with him I've learned a lot. And I've learned different things from each person at different stages.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm so blessed that my 12 years have had just amazing leaders to guide me, to challenge me, but from a place of, look, dude, you're awesome. Like, I know that you can do that. Go do it. Like, what are you waiting for? Go and be awesome. And, that's the stuff that I try and pass on, because I've had people give that to me, so that's what I'm trying to pass on.
And you're, like you say, I know you mentioned in your trailer, like it's absolute. We realize now that we've had these privileges of great people shining our light, being our champions for us, and really, when you're not in the room and they're speaking your name and they've got your back, and that is so invaluable. And I think not everyone has had that. Like, I've been so fortunate. So when I hear people haven't had that, I'm like, wow, like, so we can give back even more to them, and we can fill in the gaps that people haven't had in their lives, And also, I think you and I are very similar, because we see so much great talent as well, not just at the top, but we see them coming in, through the doors at lower levels, and we're like, you're going to be great. Like, I could just see it in you already. And I think, people love what we do because of and they know we genuinely care. And we don't do it for show. We do it behind the scenes. We do it in one-to-ones. And I think people see like our genuine passion for letting them thrive,
100%, because I feel like if I can input, you talked about someone's map of reference, their experiences, what they've been through. My thing is, how can I, if this person that I'm talking to, how can I be a positive impact in their frame of reference? So even if 10 years from now I don't know them, like, how can I encourage them onto who they're meant to become? Because every interaction inputs one way or another into your frame of reference, or your map of reference. So how can I be a positive influence in that? And like you said, like, I actually often shy away from doing things on the stage and that kind of thing, because I just like to get stuff done. I like to get to outcomes that are good for everybody. And if that's on the stage, then okay. But if it's not on the stage, even better. Just me and you know that we've had this.
Yes.
We've actually been able to do something. And I think it's just such a funny life, isn't it, really?
Yeah. But like I said, I think this is another way to fill in the gaps for someone who's really looking to start their career in leadership, or they're not getting the support they need. Like, these sort of podcasts are going to be so invaluable, and they can take stuff away, and maybe they can transform their leader into a better leader,
And this is the thing, is that sometimes you, as the person being led, can have such a profound impact on your leader that you don't think you can have. That influence over them. Like, you can actually have that if you know the right ways to approach. And that's one of the things I was actually really grateful for at work, is that I was going to be doing some reverse mentoring with one of the past MDs that we had. And they trained us on things like, how do you tell someone that they're wrong without getting their back up, right? Because for you to be a senior leader, like, you have to have some confidence and some ego in a lot of ways, right? And they would tell us simple things like, when someone's telling you something, instead of saying yes, but, you say yes and, like, super like minute changes. So instead of saying, I think you're great, but you do these things, it's like, I think you're great, and when you do these things, it doesn't fit with who you are. So they don't forget about what you've said before. So I've had such good learnings on some of these, like, little things about how do you influence up.
Yeah. But also, I've been in the room, Tolu, when you've done that, and you don't just say it. It's also the way you say it and your tone. It's not aggressive. It's not like, it's really like, tell me. That's very interesting. How like a therapist talks to you, like, have you thought about that? The way you do it is like, guys, if you got to be in your room with Tolly when he does this, because like, one day we got to do a role play, Tolly, and show people how you do it. But you do it. Oh, like, when you do it, I'm like blown away. Like, this is amazing. I want to record this. So, guys, it's not just the words; it's the way you say it.
It's how you say it. No, that's true. That is so important. But honestly, Resh, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your thoughts, who you are. And guys, I think you should connect with Resh. So the links will be in the bio to her Instagram, to her podcast. Thank you so much, Resh.
You're so welcome. And this is an absolute privilege, Tony. I'm so excited for your journey. It's going to be amazing.
Thank you very much. And thank you guys for listening to the Dunamis EQ podcast. And we will catch you on the next episode.